After writing 2 transformational books myself and supporting many other beings to do the same, I've become enthralled by the deep and mysterious magic that's activated when we choose to say yes to ourselves and commit to the book writing journey. Of course, we want to inspire change and new perspectives in our readers, but the transformation that happens as an author, both throughout the writing process and by actually releasing your book into the world, is surprisingly potent. I know I've been blindsided in the most disruptive and delicious ways by some of the changes my books have brought into my life. Writing a book is like casting a spell. Although we can never be completely sure what's going to be unleashed during the process, we choose to do it anyway. This Unbound one is a heroic journey. Each book has the potential to be a magical portal, a doorway to a new world, both for you and your reader. Each book has a very specific medicine that it's here to share with us. And each book gives us the opportunity to alchemize the magnificent imperfection of our experience into gold. The truth is that anyone can write a book. We could all get a few thousand words down and put them together. But what fascinates me is what happens when we allow the book writing process to go deeper. When we say, fuck it, get naked and dive way down beneath the surface. Letting go of the shoulds and any need to be acceptable, sensible, or approved of. What fascinates me is what happens when we make ourselves fully available to being transformed by the very act of writing a book. This is Unbound Writing, and this is the process we'll be exploring together here in the Unbound Writers Club. I'm Nicola, author and founder of the Unbound Press, and I help magical beings to write the transformational book they're really here to write at this time. I'm your guide here in the Unbound Writers Club, and the aim of this podcast is to help you to feel supported, encouraged, activated as you embark on your book writing journey. Whether you're a first-time author or have many books out in the world, my hope is that you will find something here to inspire you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Unbound Writers Club. Today, we've got a bit of a bumper episode, so make yourself comfortable, my friend. This episode is celebrating the release of our latest collaborative book at the Unbound Press, which is called Shakti Farts Belly Laughs, What Happens When Wild Women Gather. And yeah, I'm very much part of this book. So it feels like a complete joy to be celebrating it. What can I tell you about Shakti Farts? Let me read you what it says on the back cover. So in June 2021, in the aftermath of a global pandemic, a group of magical women gathered on retreat in Glastonbury, basking in warm sunshine, drinking red wine, and enjoying the delights of a particular smelly box. There were belly laughs aplenty, but the process of coming together wasn't all rainbows and unicorns. Fears, doubts, and old stories bubbled to the surface for everyone, both before and during the retreat. The sister wound runs deep, even when everyone has their own carrot. That won't make sense unless you read the book, and then it probably still won't make sense. Anyway, in this collaborative book from the Unbound Press, you get to hear from each woman as she shares her experience of coming together in circle. So that's what the book is. It's based on this experience where a group of us, like unbound, magical women, came together just outside Glastonbury together on retreat right after we came out of lockdown pretty much in the UK in June 2021. Most of us, it was organised by Sarah Lloyd, or she's the one who called us all together. She's one of the Unbound Press authors, author of Connecting the Dots. And, that's what she does. So she kind of floated the idea and invited us to gather. 6 of us gathered over 3 days because we were just coming out of lockdown. Only 6 of us could be there for the whole day. And then other people, some people came for one day. Katie Brockhurst, who's part of the book, she lives in Glastonbury. So she was kind of connecting with us throughout the retreat. And what we realized during the experience, and you'll hear about this during the book, is like, this was a different kind of retreat. Like, it was a spiritual retreat. It was a business retreat. It was a personal retreat. And it was all of those things and none of those things at the same time. There was no kind of rigid structure. There was no kind of leader of the retreat. It was a very much co-created experience, and we just ebbed and flowed and just tuned into what we wanted to do or not do at any particular time. And there were challenges with that as well. This kind of more unbound approach is not always easy. So in Shakti Farts and Belly Laughs, we're talking about the whole experience, you know, what it was like beforehand, when each of us were making the decision to go or not go, what it was like when we were there together, and the kind of things that bubbled up for each of us, and the impact of that since. And it's so interesting, like, we're all writing about the same experience, and of course I know this, everyone just puts such a unique spin on it. Everyone's got their unique perspective. So that's what makes this book so fascinating. And in today's conversation, it's a number of conversations, I got to speak with each of the women who are contributors to Shakti Farts. Some of those conversations took place like in a small group. Some took place one-to-one. So you'll hear all of them today. And yeah, the contributors are, so let me give you their names because it may not come through in the recordings of the conversations that we had. So Sarah Lloyd, of course, because she's the one who invited us to come together. Yolandi Boshoff, Emma Mulholland, who's also a team member at the Unbound Press, Kathy Bell, Catherine Crawley, Katie Brockhurst, Zoe Foster, Rachel Smithbone, and Michelle Maslin Taylor, and also Iona Russell. I'm so bad at reading out names. That's everyone who's part of Shakti Farts, including myself, and who are going to be featured in this episode today. So we recorded these conversations at different times. Like I said, sometimes it's a group of us talking, sometimes it's like me talking to one of the contributors one-on-one. As with everything Unbound, sometimes there may be stuff going on in the background. A lot of these women have kids, and we're recording this over the summer holidays, so it's all good. You get it. You get it, my love. So Shakti Farts and Belly Laughs is out now. You can get your copy wherever books are sold online. I would love you to read it. And to give you a taste of it, let's dive in and I'll introduce you to the different contributors. So Katie, welcome to the Unbound Writers Club.
Thank you very much.
I kind of feel like you've been a member, like you've been part of the Unbound Press since the beginning anyway. So it's really exciting to have you as part of Shakti Farts.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it? I know, even though I haven't published through you before, yes, I feel very much part of its journey and part of the whole movement, really.
Well, you are, because like you were the reason that I first signed with That Guy's House, because I saw that you were publishing your book with them, and then that's what led to the Unbound Press. So it's
Check me out being an influencer.
I know. Oh, but your chapter in Shakti Farts is called Return to Embodiment, which is interesting as somebody whose work is all about social media. I love what you did there.
Thank you.
What made you decide to write about that for your chapter?
When we gathered for the retreat, it was the summer of 2021. So we'd just been through a phenomenal year for all of us. And we'd spent so much time, everyone connecting online. And to be back in a physical space with a group of people was a really big thing. And it brought up lots for all of us, because there's something about connecting through computers is great. It serves a purpose to a degree, but it's nothing like when we gather physically. So I just felt it was really important to talk about it.
And something else you talk about is community and how that's become like a buzzword online that people just use and bandy around.
And I have at times too.
Yeah.
It has become a buzz marketing word, community. But I also felt like the way that we were gathered, it really was community, because many of us were connected over many years, like me and you, Sarah, Kathy, but yet also connections had been made in the digital space. They'd been strengthened in the digital space. And some of us are closer to each other than others, but as a collective, that I believe then creates community, because we're all in connection, we're all communing with one another, and then there was a unity piece to that as well. So I felt like the way that we all came together in that way actually was what I see community being.
Yeah. And you talk about like how we had, I think all of us connected online in one way or another, and trying to kind of figure out and remember who connected
story.
Who. Where did it begin? Was it you?
Was it me? Well, and I think what the conclusion that we came to was there was a few of us who were connecting each other's dots, all like independently around the same time. And again, that's where I think there's so many different versions of community, but in the way that I envisage it, it's like, who are we connected to? And then how are we becoming unified? And so, from our origin stories of who connected who. But it was really beautiful to like track that and see how we'd all been weaving with one another in different ways, both online and off, and then how that brought us all together then in physical space.
I'm just imagining like creating some kind of like gorgeous map of like how we all connected.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
It is. That would be quite fun to create, actually.
Yeah.
And another element of the experience for you is that, we were all coming to Glastonbury and you live there.
Yeah.
You moved there a few years ago. What was that like? Like, you weren't actually staying with us at Banbury Meadows where we were based, but like hanging out with us.
Yeah, I mean, it does create a little bit of FOMO because you're not there and like spending the time and living in together. So I would have had a different experience to the others in that respect. But it's also really nice for me too, because I get to share, my love of living here and get to see how much you guys all love visiting. And it was really lovely. It was really lovely to dip in and out of both. I mean, list year's one as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So finally, oh my goodness, 5 minutes go so quickly. I'm interested to hear what you feel about, when we gather like that in person, and have that experience, whether it's for like a couple of hours, a day, a few days. How does that impact, like when we go back online, what impact does that have? Like actually coming together, having that embodied experience of being in community.
I think our perceptions of each other online are affected by our own internal stuff. And we can get triggered by each other, I think, a bit more online. So, or we start to create perceptions or projections of one another, even if it's on an unconscious, like deep down level. It's not the same experience of one another. And that could be the content that we're creating or how we're showing up, because sometimes there is a kink in the energy as well between the physical person and the digital avatar person. So actually coming into physical space, I think it helps to dissolve any of those pieces that might have just been like bubbling or just simmering on the underneath, even if they're really subtle. It's like, oh, there's that real whole person. And there's a lot, I don't know, it's just a different experience of one another. So then when we then go back into the online space as the bridge in between the communication, it brings that whole person into that experience rather than just the experience of them in that sort of two-dimensional scrolling experience of that person. It just adds a depth to it that you can't quite put your finger on through the social media connecting piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you say that, I'm thinking, and that actually like shifts the way I feel and think about even other people who I know online and have never met in person. It's like, oh, okay, well, this is not all they are, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's a strange one, but I think it then can help you then strengthen those relationships in those in-between spaces from where you then gather again physically.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Oh, thank you so much, K-Dot, for being part of Shakti Farts. Like, love your chapter. I love you get to be part of this and we get to co-create it together. For those who want to find out more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I would say my website, which is socialmediaforanewaage.com. I've also got a Substack account where I write regularly every new and full moon. That's a great place to dip into me and my work. And that is socialmediaforanewaage.substack.com.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Katie. So I'm now joined by Michelle Maslin-Taylor. Welcome.
Thank you.
Excited to talk about your chapter, which is called The Retreat is Just the Beginning. And I just want to say, and kind of maybe this is a bit of a spoiler for anyone who's reading the book, I was so surprised to realise the retreat in Glastonbury, the Shakti Farts retreat, was the first one that you'd ever been on.
Yeah, yeah, I know, that's crazy, right? I've been on retreats as the host. I'm a yoga teacher and I'm quite comfortable hosting, but actually going on one as a participant for more than just daytime is something I haven't done before. So yeah, that was an interesting thing to include in my chapter.
Yeah, absolutely. And your chapter takes the form of like a number of lessons that you'd learned from the experience and that you're sharing with the reader. So I want to talk about those. There's one in particular that I want to dive into. But first, like, as this was like your first retreat experience, and you came for the day, didn't you?
Yeah, for the day, and then stayed kind of separately. Yeah, so didn't immerse myself in the full experience last time.
Well, you know, when I was recording the introduction to this episode, like, it's hard to remember like how tricksy it was to organize things at that time, because there were all these different restrictions and we couldn't all stay on site. You know, not all of us could stay there, only a limited number. So, you know, there was all of that in the mix as well. But what was it like for you to make the decision to come?
It was kind of nerve-wracking. At the time, I was actually just in the midst of buying a new house. We were literally about to exchange, waiting on the exchange.
I remember.
Yeah, so in terms of practicality, it was probably the least practical, like worst time I could leave my husband in charge of all of the dealings. But we kind of took the decision that there's never a right time when you've got kids and commitments. There is never a time when it's easy. So it just, it felt like it needed to happen. So hence why I was there for sort of one day and one night. But it felt really important to make it happen despite everything that was going on.
Well, thank you for saying that, or sharing that there's never a right time. I think that applies to so many things. And, you know, certainly when we're making that decision to go away somewhere, it's the same when it comes to writing a book as well. I always say that there's never a right time. I'm sure you've heard me say that before, Michelle. But I'm glad you did get to come, because it was the first time that we'd met in person. And one of the things you write about, one of the lessons, and it was courtesy of Kathy Bell, was how to make friends online. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah, so that was particularly potent for me, because I don't find it that easy to make new friends. I'm quite very naturally introverted, and I find it a difficult thing to do the kind of small talk. I've been told that I can be quite intense, which is fine. I'm happy with how how I am, but it can make it kind of tricky having those initial connections with people. And when we moved last summer, it really stuck with me something Kathy had said about how she just kind of found people she related to online and pinged them messages and was like, "Hi, how are you? Like, do you want to be my friend?" Basically. And I thought, you know what? I'm actually going to take that on board and give that a go. And it's worked out wonderfully, and I've made some amazing connections.
Wonderful. I love that. I really love that. I really resonate with that kind of that experience that it is, it can feel harder to make friends as we get older, and particularly, as an introvert as well. So just reaching out to somebody, it can feel really vulnerable, can't it? Just to like ping someone a message, and like all of the stuff that can come up, like we write about in this book, like so many of the women who've contributed have shared. There's all of those fears about, oh, but will they like me? Or, will I feel like the odd one out? And all of that stuff can come up. And it's the same when we're making friends as well.
Yeah, that was so interesting. As one of the people writing for the book, I just kind of assumed, and I write about it as well, that everyone else has like all got their stuff together. They seem so confident. Like, it never occurred to me until I actually saw other people's writing or read little bits of it that anyone else felt that discomfort. I assumed everyone else was happy, everyone else was confident, and I was the only one who was like thinking, oh my goodness, I'm completely out of my depth here.
We were all out of our depth. That's like the magical thing. That's why I think this book is so powerful, because it acknowledges that like we all feel it in different ways. So how do you feel now that the book is making its way into the world?
Oh, it's so exciting. It was so beautiful because we regathered. So that was a different experience again. But just, I think this book's going to be really amazing for anybody who's sat on the fence, who's not done anything like this before, not gone on a retreat or gathered in that way, and is feeling anxious. To be able to see that everybody that went to ours had so many of the same feelings, even though we didn't know each other, were experiencing it. And I hope it will give them the kind of confidence to step out of their comfort zone and go, even though it's not the right time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that, Michelle. As you were saying it, I was just thinking, like, if anyone's organising a retreat, they should send this book to anyone who's thinking about joining.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's like,
instead of having that section on the website that's like, this is for you if,
yeah,
or like frequently asked questions, just frequently asked questions. Here's the book, read the book.
Exactly. Got things coming up about, fears and doubts coming up about attending this retreat. Just read Shakti Farts and Belly Laughs and you'll realise that that's completely normal part of the process. Fantastic. Oh, Michelle, I'm so grateful that we got to gather together on retreat and that you're part of this brilliant book. Your chapter. I just loved your chapter so much. So thank you for being part of it.
Thank you.
For those listening who want to find out more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on Instagram at Michelle Maslin Taylor, or my website is michellemaslintaylor.com. So I'm sure you'll be able to find me. I'd love to connect.
Amazing. Yeah, Michelle might message you and ask to be your friend. So
I might, yeah. If you want a new friend, just ping me a "do you want to be my friend" message. I'll happily oblige.
You'll be inundated now. Thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, Nicola.
So, Rachel, as you were trying to make me laugh and succeeding, I'm excited to talk about your chapter. Like, you joined us for a day on the retreat, and in your chapter, well, you use a word in the title which I didn't even know, so I had to look it up. So
I feel so proud about that.
I know. Immiscible, is that how you?
Yeah.
Immiscible soul.
Yeah.
Such a good word. And the subtitle of your chapter is A Tale of Overcoming Social Anxiety Through Self-Love. So one, I want you to talk to us about the word immiscible. Well, yeah, do that first. I won't give you two questions in one go.
Okay, cool. I'll talk to you. Yeah. So that word, I'm not going to lie, I was looking for exactly the right word for a metaphor that I had in my mind. And as an English literature graduate, I am obsessed with old school giant dictionaries and giant proper, slam them down on the table thesauruses. And I can't remember quite how it worked, but I think I had a word in mind and I looked it up and I was like, no, it doesn't quite fit the bill. So I went to the good old thesaurus and was looking for synonyms and I saw that word and instantly I was like, yes. And then I looked it up to see exactly what it meant. And it's like where two things don't mix together. So it's like oil and water. And I mean, it's just the most beautiful word to describe something so powerful like that, where those two things just will not combine. They can be in the same space, but they don't combine. So it's not a word I had in my vocabulary. I wish it was, but it is now. But it's a word that came to me for that chapter.
Perfect. That's how Unbound came to me originally through, I guess I'd heard the word before, but yeah, through the magic of a thesaurus. So
no, that's actually where I got the idea, was from reading when because I'm passionate about words and etymology and language, like I say, as a language student. And when I read Unbound, and the way you described how that word captivated you, and then knowing you as a friend, knowing you as a colleague and a peer, and seeing how this one word had alchemized within your life. I was always kind of looking for the word that would do that for me. And admissible is not it, but it was it for that chapter. Do you want to know what the word that's really landing with me is?
Yeah.
Audacious.
Oh, yeah, I so feel that for you.
Love it. Even the sound of it in my mouth, audacious.
Well, look, I'm really interested then, because your chapter, you're talking about social anxiety. And I, as someone who knows you, I haven't known you for a huge amount of time, but, since I first knew you, I wouldn't have associated you with someone who experiences social anxiety. And you talking about the word audacious, it's like, how do those two things sit together?
They're immiscible, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Except they're not. I've always had an audacious spirit, and people are always surprised that social anxiety is something that has plagued me. But there's I studied confidence for a really long time, and how to appear confident, how to appear and embody that confidence. But inside, I've always felt this sense of, it's such a combination of things. It's a combination of feeling ill at ease with myself, ill at ease with who I really am, ill at ease with what I am in this world, ill at ease with, essentially a lot of it actually comes down to people pleasing. I hope they'll like me. I hope I'm good enough for them. And being in social situations, especially when there's so many people around, I've always just found it completely overwhelming. And the anxiety comes up. I used to do everything in my power to avoid situations like that. And even the thought of having to go on retreat, somewhere where you couldn't literally escape. There was no escape from those feelings of feeling completely overwhelmed with the discomfort of being seen or trying to be something. Because I never really felt like I was trying to be something I'm not, but I never would it never felt good enough to just be who I am.
Yeah.
And that's why it's a tale of self-love, because for me, at least, it was only in really, really radically accepting and then loving all of who I am that I was able to actually be in full, unfettered communion with other women. Because it didn't matter what they thought anymore, because it mattered more what I thought of myself.
Yeah, I'm sure. Oh my goodness, so many listening, I definitely resonate with that, so hard. And I'm sure many people listening to this will as well. And I just love the way you describe all the different layers of this in your chapter, not just from the day when you were there with us, but afterwards, the after effects of it as well, how the impact rippled out into your life. So powerful.
And it's really strange now. What are we only a year later a year later. It's so strange now to look back at that and think, oh my God, I can't believe I was only able to go for a day.
Yeah.
And it actually breaks my heart. And that's why I think it's really important, because I think of all the people who were in the position that I was before I did all of this self-love and self-acceptance work, and how much of my life, like I'm 40 now, and how much of my life has been put on a sideline because I was too uncomfortable in my own skin and too socially anxious to be in those spaces of incredible alchemy and connection. And that makes me really sad. And it makes me really sad to know that there are so many people who are in that prison, that self-imposed prison. And not everyone's going to like you. Like, there's going to be, I know there's people I really piss off. My own family think I'm a suck-up because I'm so enthusiastic. I'm like, I just have that level of enthusiasm. I'm sorry about that you can't deal with it. But that is just how I roll. Well, so it makes me really sad to think how much I personally missed out on, and by extension, how much other people are missing out on.
We'll just keep being your audacious self. That's what I can say. And also, I feel like that's why this book is so powerful, because we all talk about like that similar kind of doubts and fears, but each for our own individual lens. And I think, being willing to do that and to acknowledge all the stuff that comes up when we think about coming together, it's, hopefully going to be really kind of activating and healing for other women to read. So thank you so much for being part of it, Rachel.
Oh, it's honestly just so magical. And going on retreat this year together, it's been the highlight of my year. It was just incredible. And to not feel any of those feelings that I talked about in the book, to actually look at it and be like, wow, it's just not present. It's not here. It's not present. That's magical.
Yeah. Alchemy, like true alchemy. You talked there about self-love, because obviously you are like the queen of self-love. How can people find out more about your work, Rach?
Come find me on Facebook or on Instagram. I'd love to connect, especially if you know that you're here to facilitate transformation and hold space and sacred space for others, but your own not enoughness, your own perfectionism, your own doubt, your own inability to accept all of who you are and therefore all of your magic. If that's holding you back, come and connect. I'm on Facebook as Rachel Helen Smithbone, and I'm on Instagram as Rachel Smithbone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rach. Love you.
Oh, my pleasure. Love you. Bye, guys.
So Sarah, I'm going to come to you first and welcome you into the Unbound Writers Club, which you're already kind of a veteran member of the Unbound Writers Club. Did you have any idea that when you first had this kind of nudge to arrange or invite people together in Glastonbury in June of 2021, that it would become like something else beyond that? Like, obviously it's become this collaborative book, but did you have any kind of inkling of that?
Honestly, I knew it was bigger than us, but had no idea what that looked like, which is standard actually in my life. I just kind of go with it. And I remember talking to you just before, I think the idea dropped in, and it was like, I think we're in the middle of the lockdown, and I was like, I need to be amongst people. I need to be sitting in circle, real life, like properly in circle, because we were all doing it beautifully online, and it was just, we need to be in this space. And I kept getting visions of this. There's a part in Gladiator where he walks along and his hands are in the fields, and I was like, we need to be in that space. And magically found that space where Banbury Meadow was amazing. So yeah, other than that, in short, yes, I knew it was bigger than us, but I had no idea.
So I mean, it feels to me, and this is the same for everybody, like there's a lot that each of us could have written about for this book, Shakti Farts. Like, how did you decide what to put into your chapter and what to focus on?
I didn't decide anything. It just kind of happened. I felt like I needed to almost set the scene. I felt like, I guess what I'm realizing is, and it's also really clarifying kind of my role in situations now. When in Circle, it's almost like I organize the space and I organize the container, and then I just kind of allow that magic to happen. And it feels like this is what's happened with Shakti Farts, but it's also what I'm also doing with some other work. That seems to be the natural order of things if I really go with purpose. But yeah, it was I've forgotten what you even asked me now.
How did you choose what to put in the chapter? And you did it.
It just kind of happened. I just set in the scene. I really wanted to set the scene. I wanted to kind of capture that whole pre-journey to that space, almost like why I felt called to do it and kind of the intention behind it. And I think that's something that often we forget, is the intention behind something. And then I also just want to capture the fun. You know, I had so much fun, and I really wanted to include the laughs and really kind of draw the reader in so that they were sitting with us and having, you know, we were all giggling like schoolgirls. It was absolutely amazing. It was so needed, and just wanted to share that medicine.
Gorgeous. And in terms of collaborative books, like you've got another one in the works as well. What is it you love about kind of collaborative books in particular?
I do. It's funny because I have a love-hate relationship with them. I see a lot of collaborative books out there that just feel they don't knit together very well. It's like, this is a bunch of stories about this thing. I think I think Shakti Farts has become the beginning of a different way of doing collaborative books. I feel like it's that threading between, like, it's not enough just to be in that situation. I feel like there's almost this red thread that we've got to pull through, and everyone's sitting in a circle. And because everybody, I think what was amazing is that we're all in the same space together. We're all in the same yurts, we all had the same food, and we all had that external experience, but everybody experienced it so differently. And I think that for me, it just having that little dance of each other's experience in that same space, it's just humanity in its most beautiful, you know, most gorgeousness, because we all have different experiences of the same thing. And I just love the way that all knits together in Shakti Farts, and I don't see that in other collaborative books.
Yeah, fantastic. It's amazing how that happened. I mean, obviously, like, each of the pieces came from that shared experience, but we were just talking about this before we hit record, like the way it all weaves together. It's like almost like it was planned.
But there's no plan.
Exactly.
A bit like the retreat itself.
Exactly. Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. Thank you so much. You mentioned like the circle there. So I'm going to come to you, Yolandi, next, because your piece, the title of it is The Circle Wounds. And again, I'm going to ask you the same question, Yolandi, like what made you decide to focus on that specifically?
So I think, you know, like coming together it was just so freaking magical. I'm like sitting here, I just want to like cry because it was so good, right? It was so juicy. But then there's like this shitload of triggers that basically comes with wanting to be in that space with people, because retreats are you know, that's our place. That's where we create and we come together, and there's so much love to share and everything. But what I saw, even as I read the book now, it's just like everyone went through that. We're all going through that, like those pieces of us showing up. That's like insecure, that's hurt, like all our old stories, all the bullshit that we carry, all of that stuff comes when you're in that container. And it's about starting to recognize it and be okay with it as well, and to see where it comes from. Because, you know, sometimes like people leave and then they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't enjoy that experience. And it's like, it's not you. It's actually, this is so much conditioning. There's so much stuff that's happened, and where we come from. And I wanted to just point that out so that, you know, when you go to a retreat, like even if you've read the book or you're wanting to create retreats, it's all about like, how do you manage that? How do you look at it? How do you actually start, you know, talking about the fact that we're all fucking insecure and we're all full of wounds and we're all full of so much hurt and stuff, but we come together to hold space for each other. And that's the magic of the retreat. And so for me, it was just like, I just needed to put that in there so that we can actually be real about like what's happening. But then as I read all the other ladies' stuff, I was just like, shit, everyone went through this. So it was actually so good because we didn't get to see each other's chapters before the book came together. And just reading that, I was like, it just amplified how it feels within all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that so powerful because I think we can all look at each other, and we talked about this a lot when we were on retreat, obviously, like sat around the fire, glass of red wine or whatever it was, and we all talked about our insecurities and what had come up around coming together. But actually, I think to read all of our pieces and to see like that is there for every single one of us, that we've all done a shit ton of work over the years, but it's still there. It's so powerful. It was powerful for me, and I can only imagine how powerful it will be for the reader to kind of see however much work you've done, like whatever path you're on, whatever work you're doing, like this stuff, it still comes up, and that's okay. It doesn't have to stop you from coming together and having the experience.
And what I loved about the retreat as well is the fact that everyone could be so open and honest about it, because we just created such a beautiful container where people go, oh my God, I'm feeling this. And then everyone's like, cool, feel it, do it, and it's just, and I think there's a lot to be learned from the book about like how to actually experience that in a retreat space, so if you're thinking about like running a retreat, you have to think about these things when you're holding space for people, because they're all going to be going through this stuff, because as we proved and we wrote about it, people don't speak about this stuff generally in retreat. So that's what makes the book so unique for me, is that like we took everyone's experiences and we put it into the space, and we're like, oh, guess what? It's the same for everyone. So it's a very important element that we need to consider, even as retreat leaders, as people are going into these things, holding space for people.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I know you've only like you've literally been reading the book the past like day or so.
I literally couldn't put it down.
I love that. Do you feel it will change the way you hold space, Yolandi?
Oh yes, definitely, because it made me think, it made me think about like the fact that I wasn't the only one experiencing it, because like I say, I didn't see what the other guys were going through. So it changes my perception. And, when I'm running my next retreat, I'm sure shit going to be changing the way that I do things. And, just the way that we also did the retreat with, because a lot of people mentioned in the book about like things being really packed and we have to be busy and we have to do and blah, blah, blah. And that's so the retreat culture that we kind of hold, right? Because something has to be done and we have to be doing. But the being part of this retreat and just connecting, that was where all the magic came out. Like those moments when we sat around the fire and we just started talking, that's when the shit got real, right? And as much as I appreciate, and having led my own retreats before in a very structured fashion, there's no fucking way I'm doing that again, because this was one of the most nourishing experiences for me on a connection level with other people.
I love that. And also the way that the way we had the retreat, it kind of mirrors the writing process as well. I feel the way this has been brought together, like without us going, right, who's going to write about like what, and how is it going to fit together? We just trusted, and it's like come together in the most magical and powerful way. So thanks so much, Yolandi, for being part of it.
Pleasure.
Hope to be sitting around the fire with you again sometime very soon.
Definitely.
I'm going to come to you next. Oh my goodness, it's been quite the journey since we kind of were on retreat together back in June last year, and now you are our first employee at the Unbound Press, which is quite amazing that that's come from.
Yes, definitely. I know, and I write about this in the book in my chapter, and I do say this every time anybody mentions Glastonbury. So you're obviously probably all sick of hearing it, but I always say how many shifts happen after I've been there. There's something about the land and the magic and the codes that Avalon holds that seems to bring it forth for me. And I now realise, having been in this circle for more than a year now, that it's not just me, it happens to all of us. we all go through such changes, and one of those changes was obviously becoming your first employee at the Unbound Press. So I wasn't expecting that, that's for sure.
Well, hopefully that was sometimes the changes can be quite disruptive after we've been on retreat, particularly in Glastonbury, so hopefully that was a good one.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, you write about that, like we've talked about that, like the apprehension, the fears we can have about coming together, like particularly with other women. But what you speak about in your chapter as well, is like knowing that when we go on retreat, particularly somewhere, like Glastonbury, like that, knowing that we can't not be changed by that. Like something is going to be activated, and that can be scary in itself. It can be like, am I willing to make myself available to that? So you went through that process before deciding to come.
Yes, definitely. It was a really strange combination of wanting the freedom that was trying to burst through after lockdowns and things like that, but also feeling that pull to want to stay at home. So it was a real heart and head battle of desperation to kind of break free and embrace connection with other people and spend time in circle with other magical women, along with that anxiety, I suppose, of what's going to happen on so many levels if I do, making myself vulnerable, physically being away from home and being with other people that I've not seen for a long time or not met before. Yeah, it brought up so much for me. But one of the magical things I realised when I had the privilege of editing the book, I got to read everybody's chapters, and actually I think I'd started mine before I began editing the book, and then read a few pieces and came back to it, and it gave me the courage to be completely honest about exactly how I felt before and during the retreat, because everybody else was showing up on the page and being just so vulnerable and open. And I thought, you know what, if everyone else can do this, then so can I. Why shouldn't I share how I felt? Because it'll help somebody else share how they feel when they read the book. So yeah, I think it's important that honesty was able to come through for each of us, actually, I would say, on a really deep and personal level.
Oh, I love that. How like seeing each of the other pieces gave you permission to kind of be, to bring more of yourself to the page. And what was it like to do that, and to actually write the piece?
I think something that Sarah said before, it's kind of like it came through. It almost sort of, it came through at first, and then my head got in the way. I think I wrote about 600 words, and I did the usual thing of thinking, oh, no, oh, that's not right. I'll come back to it. But then the piece just sort of came through me, and it wanted to show up in a very particular way. And as we now know, that is pretty much the hallmark of anything that is birthed through the Unbound Press. Every single book, every single author, whether that's in a collaborative book or a solo book, brings through the soul of that book in, some ways it's bumpy, some ways it's not, but it's always authentic. And that's what's really special about it. There's no bullshit, as like Yolandi would say. It's all very, Shakti Farts and fuck all retreat and all those things that I don't think you get on many retreats. Actually, we've all been on structured retreats here, I would say. And, there's something to be said for that, and there is a place for that. But there's just something so amazing about being able to show up and say to people, I'm having a wobble, I just need a few minutes, or just to have a quick cry, to have these deep conversations. But then the next minute, you're absolutely peeing yourself, laughing and talking about just all manner of so-called inappropriate things. It's like, fuck it, everything's welcome here. And that's amazing. That's just so powerful. I just love being a part of it. What can I say?
Oh, well, I'm so grateful to you for helping to kind of hold space for our authors and these books and like everything that unfolds with the Unbound Press. So grateful that we got to meet in person back then, and now look, it's amazing.
I know. Avalon knows what she's doing, all right.
Certainly does. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you. And Catherine. Oh. Oh.
I feel really nervous.
What are you nervous about?
Oh, it's just also moving, to be honest. I'm just so deeply touched, and as Yolandi said, I just want to burst into tears. I really do. I feel the tears so close. is so precious. It's really, really so precious, you know, having had this experience together. And then really, as you say, the deep authenticity of what's being shared, you know, the heart that is being shared in this book is really, really special. So yeah, I'm very present in my heart, which really brings my tears to the surface.
Yeah, I'm really feeling that when we came onto Zoom initially. I was quite surprised at how those tears like immediately bubbled up. And like you say, the authenticity of each of these pieces and the vulnerability. And I wonder, Catherine, what was it like for you to write your piece and to bring that or to allow that through?
Yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And so, you know, I just want to thank you as well, Nicola, for the amazing, you know, way that you hold these spaces for us to write from this perspective, I think, you know. And for so long, you know, my husband is a journalist, and you know, I kept saying for many years, I feel like I want to write, you know, and he'd literally sort of semi-laugh at me, not in an unkind way, but, you know, Catherine, you're so good at many other things. I'm not sure that you're going to write, you know. And so I just didn't, you know, and then I sort of started to write a lot more, you know, about my work and about my own journey. And there's this feeling of like, you know what, no, I think I can do this, you know. And so then when this kind of opportunity came, it was like, hell, you know, and the not thinking about it and the just allowing it to flow is really what it's all about. And I think that is really the whole experience that we went through. And that's really what I am so passionate about, is for us to, you know, to not condition ourselves anymore, you know. And so whether we're conditioning ourselves as to how we show up in a space, which is obviously so often what is happening, whether we're holding a retreat or whether we're sort of being in the retreat space as a participant, we are observing a persona, you know, we're conditioning ourselves into one box or another kind of thing, you know. Am I the space holder, or am I sitting in a circle, you know, how am I? And we do the same thing with our writing, you know. Okay, now I've got my writer's hat on, and am I creating my paragraphs properly, and am I creating my conclusion, and you know, all of that crap that we've been given at school as to kind of how to structure things, right? So it's so precious when you can just totally let all of that go. It does itself. Like it does itself with the greatest love and the greatest wisdom. And that's what I experienced when I was writing this, you know, and it was very vulnerable. And, you know, there were moments where I wasn't sure whether that was really what I wanted to share, whether that was just too vulnerable. And I did find myself sort of, oh, how am I going to be judged? Like going back into that old place of actually being concerned about how I'm going to be judged, you know, and then the deep breath. You know, this is all of me, and all of me is welcome. And that is really what I feel, you know, so moved to support myself and women in the world to know that all of us is welcome. That is the medicine and the magic that we hold, is when we are all present, not just the shiny glossy bits, but all the kind of messy, vulnerable, wounded, tired, angry, frustrated, just all of those bits, you know. And actually that's then when the belly laughter comes. I mean, that was what was so amazing for me, right? You know, that's when the farts fall out and the belly laughter comes, because you feel so freaking comfortable in your own skin, like so at home, that you can just do it all and be all and enjoy, like, you know, just beyond what on a day-to-day basis, you know, you kind of imagine is possible. So yeah, it's just,
yeah. Well, you were responsible for many of the belly laughs, I'm going to say, with like the laughter yoga story, which we don't have to tell, but it was just a very like so funny story. And actually thinking about that, I think that's when the idea for the book came through, when we were laughing, which kind of tells me that creativity and self-expression, like, of course it can like flow and things can be sparked when we're being very serious, you know, of course it can, but actually Sarah's just put in the chat, the book is a fart. It is pretty much, it just kind of came out. Like, how did that happen? Oh, I didn't mean to do that. But yeah, like creativity loves that sense of laughter and fun and playfulness and just letting go. So I'm so grateful to you for bringing that to the retreat, Catherine.
I surprised myself as well, because I think it is that word, the playfulness, and again, for me, believe it or not, I can be quite a serious freaking person, and so that's what was just so beautiful, because I felt so relaxed and so at home, that this kind of wild playfulness then kind of came out in me, and that was just such a gift, and these two beautiful, elderly people, who had taught me the laughter yoga, and they joined us, didn't they? These beautiful, Hindi couple who would stand there every day telling me that was the best possible yoga medicine that you could possibly do. It was just, just such magic. And we just embodied that. We embodied that because it came from the heart, and came from that deep connection to the space we were in and to each other and to the earth, right? To that beautiful place that Sarah found was just so precious. It was such a part of our experience. So yeah. Oh my God. I really, I know that this book, like Yolandi has said, is going to be so supportive to so many people, and I just want to say that as well, as a woman going into women's spaces, it's not easy. It's not easy at all, and, we do put on so many masks and we hold ourselves back in so many ways, and I see that with just so many women that I work with who, they'll do the one-to-one, but then they don't want to go into the collective spaces because they're afraid, there's so much fear to go into the collective spaces, right? And so I just really want to open, arms, that it is safe, that, we can show up, and we can hold ourselves and each other, and we are remembering how to do that in the most loving and nurturing way. And I really, really know that this book is going to support women to see that. So yeah, so much more.
Shakti Farts medicine. Oh, so amazing. Before we finish this part of the conversation, I'm going to be speaking with the other contributors as well. It's so good to have you here together. I'd love for each of you just to share the best way that people can connect with you if they're listening and they want to find out more about your work. So Sarah, I'll come to you first. What's the best way? Unmute yourself.
Might help. Best way to find me, I'm actually more active on Instagram, so I'm Sarah Lloyd _is_PR, and my website is www.indigosoulpr.com. Yeah, I'm normally hanging out in all the spaces with these guys, so
yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Sarah. Yolandi, how can people connect?
Yeah, I think so. Instagram's probably also the best space. So Yolandi _divine_soul, or visit my website on divinesoul.me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Instagram's the best place to catch me, and I'm at _spiritual_mother. Did I say that right?
We'll put it in the show notes, so it's fine.
There for a minute.
I had a moment. Oh, thanks. And Catherine, what's the best place for people to connect with you?
So yeah, to get a sort of sense of all that I do, Facebook will give you a real introduction to that and to the spaces that I'm holding. So it's Catherine.Crawley.9, I think it is, on Facebook, and then my website as well, which is allcatherine.com. More information about how you can work with me is there.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you all so much for this conversation and being part of Shakti Farts. I'm just so excited for the book to go into the world now. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
Thank you so much, Nicola. Thank you.
So Iona, welcome to the Unbound Writers Club.
Oh, how exciting to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you here. I was trying not to laugh then when we hit the record button because I always love connecting with you. But anyway, let's talk about your chapter, which is called Should I Stay or Should I Go? And it's the final chapter in the book. And actually, this is a bit of a, plot reveal. But you didn't come to the retreat. So can you tell us a little bit about that process and what your chapter's about?
Oh yeah, it was really, I want to celebrate and honor all of us women who are in business, and whether we're mums as well, or we've got side hustle, or we're doing all the things, we're trying to take care of everything, and quite often we forget to take care of ourselves. And so we're not living life from a full cup. And then also we know we need to build connections, and particularly with the last 2 years we've been through, it's trying to be with people. So I had this kind of like dichotomy. It's like, do I stay? Do I go? I'm exhausted, but I want to go and connect with women. Also, it'll probably be really good for my business. And so then and then that's when I started thinking from the head. But also, I just had somebody come and transition for end of life in my house. And I wanted to clear my house out, and it was a very beautiful experience. And so it wasn't traumatic, but I needed to kind of regroup. And then it meant that I was going to be coming back to the house to still redecorate the room, to still put it back in order. And I just decided, actually, what do I need in this moment? And I think, well, my intention for the chapter is just to remind all of us, men and women, young and old, wherever we are in our journey, sometimes the best thing we can do is nothing at all.
Oh, yeah. That is so powerful, Iona. And I love that is like closing the book, because I think there can be this tendency, and Kathy talks about it in her chapter as well, that kind of fear of missing out. And like, you know, what is the intention for me or us to make this decision to go, you know, to this event, to this retreat, whatever it is. And there can be a part of us that's like, oh, you know, well, it's going to be powerful. It's going to be beneficial. I should just push through and do it. And what you did was to like really listen to your heart and your soul and make it like the most nourishing decision for you. So powerful.
Yeah, and because it's not just how we show up in our business or on the meditation mat or yoga mat, or it's how we show up and we embody Zen lifestyle, good intentions in all areas of our life, in everything we do. And with that, yeah, like I was also so thinking about that, and that's what I practice what you preach, because that's what I do with my clients. It's like, you know, we get to show up in all areas of our life in our best authentic self and nourish ourselves. But it's that the fear of missing out was real. And it was really interesting because the intention of this event being held was so open, heart-led, spiritually guided. It wasn't rigid. There was no linear structure. And because everybody was showing up in that capacity, I didn't actually feel like I was missing out. I saw the photos. I'm like, oh, it would have been nice to be there. But it was really interesting. I felt really connected because I wasn't excluded. You were posting photographs, we were sharing. I could like see who got lost, see what disasters had happened, saw what triumphs have happened. And I felt really connected. And so I didn't feel excluded. And I think that's the role of women now in leadership roles. And I believe every woman is a leader. And I remember, just to come back to that, I had one woman who I said, you know, I work with female leaders. And she, oh, I'm not a leader, but I know you, so I'd work with you. And I'm like, you're running a business, you're self-employed, you're raising a child. Like, I mean, anyone who's raising a child, quite frankly, you're leading the next generation. Mm-hmm. Anyone who's like, we're all leaders and we all get to be at the front. There's no hierarchy. There's no, like, it's not a triangle, it's a circle. Yes, somebody may be facilitating that circle, but that's the thing. We're all leaders. And when women are showing up in particular from this leadership quality with heart, then we're all in it together. And that was definitely the intention that I felt from even not being there.
Yeah, exactly. You were very, and there were, you know, a few people who couldn't actually come in the end, or were, you know, made the decision not to come. And we all said, you know, when we were there on retreat, we really felt each one of your presence. And, you know, that's the last line in your chapter, like making that decision allowed you to be more present with us, even though you weren't there, and we were more present with you. So how powerful was that?
Well, and we're all connected. We're connected to the big oneness. Everything is energy. And so we all say that. So if we really believe that, then, therefore, we are all connected. And also to show up in integrity, whether we go or not. And obviously, I chose the name of the chapter based on the Clash song. Because, you know, growing up a while ago. You know, it was growing up, should I stay or should I go? You know, it's like, yeah, you know, the 60s and 70s babies. Yeah, it's like, I think it's just a reminder for us all. And me still, like, I get to come from that place of, okay, what nourishes me? What is for the greater good of all? Because if we're not showing up in our strength, now strength doesn't mean being strong and squashing down feelings. To be strong is also vulnerable. It's also sharing. It's, you know, and it can be hard, it can be raw, but it can also, it's courage. That's, I think, the word I'm going to go for, courage. When we can be courageously ourselves, whatever that entails, and actually tune in. What do I need right now? What's the best for everybody else? And how can I show up? Because the thing is if I'd come and been exhausted and then overwhelmed and then tired, and I mean, I might have been less there than I was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's coming from that place of, you know, whenever we show up for ourselves in that way, it's a courageous act. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for making that decision, Iona. It was, yeah, really powerful to kind of witness. And thank you for writing the chapter that closes Shakti Farts. I'm just so grateful to you. And for those who are listening and want to find out more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
IonaRussell.com. Very easy. I'm also on Instagram as I am Iona Russell, and also Facebook. But yeah, pop over to my website.
Amazing. We'll make sure the link's in the show notes. Thanks, Iona.
Thank you.
So, Kathy fucking Bell, I'm going to come to you.
Thank you. Didn't expect that one. Okay.
To address you by your proper title and talk about your chapter, which is called The Little Girl in Me Sees the Little Girl in You. And, you know, we all talk about, in one way or another, our resistance to like coming on retreat, gathering on retreat together in our different chapters and pieces that we wrote for Shakti Farts. But you come at it from a really interesting angle. And that is the one of like fear of missing out. Like when you were making the decision to come on retreat, part of you was like, well, actually, do I really want to go? Or is it just that when I see the pictures on social media, I'm just going to think, oh, I wish I was there. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like what made you decide to come from that angle, fear of missing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm an only child. I don't know if that really makes a difference, but it seemed to do for me. And it was the story that I tell in the book, you know, the being pushed out of the social circle, and that really then followed me around through most of my life. And also being highly sensitive or empathic, whatever you want to call it, that also it detached me, I suppose, in a way from my own feelings. So I noticed as I started to get older that I would miss out on things. I would deny myself opportunities to socialize, and then I would feel deeply regretful about that. And I would also not really know, and I would say yes to things. I would also say yes to a lot of things, and I would get there and feel, you know, instantly uncomfortable. I would feel instantly regretful that I'd also, you know, that I'd said yes. And so I started to realize that I was not being discerning with my choices, and based on how I felt, I was just going yes, or oh no, I don't. You know, I was kind of just jumping in and making rash decisions without really checking in with myself. And yeah, the fear of missing out. I mean, doesn't every child have that? But I don't know, maybe mine just continued throughout my adult life. I would attract friendships that, you know, whether it was the three of us, or I would have other groups and friends where a couple would get on better and they would go off, and I would, you know, take all that very deeply personally and kind of internalize that, or the behaviors of others as you know, as being something that was, you know, wasn't wrong, something as something that was wrong with me. So this being left out was just something that followed me around and really cemented the belief that I wasn't liked, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't popular enough, and I wasn't cool enough, you know, and all of those different stories that we get presented with.
as I said at the top of when I started talking, the running of other people's energy as a highly sensitive child was something that really confused me. So as I said, I didn't really know when I'm making decisions, I didn't really know where the decision was coming from, and would often find myself in these situations that I really didn't want to be in. And so as a grown up, when Sarah first said about it, it was a yes, but I was like, oh, where does that yes come from? Is that yes coming from my need not to be left out? Because at the time I hadn't met you, I hadn't met Yolandi, I'd only, kind of met Yolandi a couple of times online. I hadn't met Zoe, I hadn't met Michelle, I hadn't met Rachel, I hadn't met a couple of the others who were there as well. And so it was like Catherine, for example, and it was like, I only know Sarah. Oh no, I know Emma as well. I only know Sarah and Emma. Like, what am I going because I don't want to be left out of that group that I can see and sense forming something really special? Or am I going because is the pull to say yes really because I'm supposed to be there, and this is a great opportunity to meet new people and to be part of that group, as I often, the wounded side of me will often feel very on the outside of groups. So it was it was something I really had to sit with, and I did actually. It was that making that decision was kind of my one of. I just took my time making the decision because I felt like I had really evolved in that decision making process from being someone who would just jump in to being somebody who would contemplate and feel and think and consider the real and true feelings and motivations behind that. So I was quite proud of myself for that decision.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing it. Thank you for sharing it in the book. And the people listening can't see us, but Zoe and I are here with you as we're recording this, and we're both nodding all the way through. Like, that discernment piece is so key. And to make a decision from that place. And so how was that for you after making the decision from that place? Just briefly, like, how was the experience this time of being on retreat from making a decision? I'm not saying you haven't made decisions from that place before, but how was it to actually go and to make it from that feels like a really grown up place?
Yeah, definitely. The word empowered came to me. It was an empowered decision. It felt good. It felt good to know that I was heading into a situation that I really and truly felt like I was supposed to be there. I think there can sometimes be those things where we're like, oh, I'm supposed to be there, but really we're just operating maybe from the mind and ego realm of just kind of just hopping on any opportunity that presents itself. So it really truly felt like I was supposed to be there, and as always, having Emma as my co-pilot, that just even the fact that we were going to drive down together, and it just felt really good, and it kind of started the whole experience off in a way that I hadn't experienced with being on retreat. I felt grounded from the moment I got there, rather than very, very lofty like I have done in the past at different retreats. So it was a really great experience.
Glad you had a good time, Kathy.
It was lovely, thanks.
It was all right.
Yeah, it was all right.
Well, thank you for bringing that piece of the puzzle, like that lens, to Shakti Farts, because I love how everybody, is obviously writing from their own perspectives, and everyone's bringing a different piece. So I really appreciate your chapter and everything you talk about there. Kathy, for those who are listening who want to find out more about you and your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would imagine when this goes, no, I'm still going to have my Instagram. It's okay. I'm not burning that down as well. So we're recording this in a very, you know, people might come to this like years later and think, what is she on about? But we are just in the Lionsgate portal has just opened. It's not even at its peak yet, and we're already all feeling this shaky ground. So I had in mind to burn everything down and, you know, cancel everything, but I think I'm just going to sit on that. So no, Instagram, so it's just Kathy.Bell and then a little underscore is a great place, or kathybell.uk is my website.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kathy. Go and find Kathy on Instagram before she burns everything down. We'll put that in the show notes.
Please do. It might not be there for long. No.
Yeah.
No, it's like a journal. You can't, you know, it's like, it's not going to get burnt down, I promise. Okay.
Oh, thanks, Kathy. Thank you. I'm going to come to Zoe now. So Zoe, your chapter is called The Goddess Wound, and you actually joined us on the final day of the retreat, came in for a day and write about that experience in your chapter.
Yeah.
And I wonder if you could give the people listening, the listener, an idea, a sense of like what that was like for you to come into that experience just for a day. And like Kathy was talking about, like many of us, we hadn't met, like we connected online, but we hadn't met in person. So what was that like? What was bubbling up?
All the things Kathy mentioned. Everything. And definitely the feeling of the black sheep, you know, being the odd one out, and in so many different ways, and also just intense anxiety about, well, we were coming out, not really coming out, but kind of beginning to emerge from a pandemic lockdown, you know, kind of world where all of us introverts and hyper introverts had, you know, found a whole world of community online, and had kind of, you know, honestly been kind of thriving in that world, because it, as a hyper introvert, I've just coined that term.
I love it.
really served me really well, and of course got to connect with so many incredible women, you know, in particular women, and felt like for, you know, decades I'd been trying to find my tribe, my home, whatever you want to call it, and suddenly it was all kind of materializing in the online space, which I, you know, never would have considered. And the idea of then taking that kind of bubble out into the real world then, and meeting people in real life with all of our, you know, warts and all, health issues, you know, like all of it, it brought up so much anxiety for me. And when Sarah, you know, put the call out there for the retreat, I was like, no, no way. But then, of course, as we began to kind of, you know, have discussions about it as a group and stuff, and Sarah was kind of, you know, putting out more of what it was going to be about, I did feel really called to come for the day. I was like, I can manage a day, you know, it's literally just drive up there and I can leave whenever I want. You know, there's no kind of pressure. I don't have to stay overnight. I don't have to do the whole, like, what do I look like in the morning? You know, all of that intense anxiety. And obviously, like, one of the things I mentioned in my chapter is dealing with, like, skin issues and like feeling really, like, awful about that and really vulnerable, especially with all of you gorgeous women in real person, you know, real life, real kind of like, yeah. So yeah, there was just a lot of anxiety. And as Kathy mentioned, there was a lot of, you know, do I belong here? Is this something that, like, I want for my ego, for the kind of, you know, the idea that maybe this is an opportunity? And actually, I'm trying to think back, but I don't think that really came up consciously. I didn't really see it in that way. But in retrospect, and all of the processing that we've done since, some of that has definitely come up for me. Is that, the idea that I could have lost out on, so many different things that we have birthed since the retreat. And so many different connections, incredible connections. And I don't say that from a kind of mercenary business point of view, but from a really so glad point of view. I don't know if that really makes sense to the listener, but I look back on that day and feel like that was a really huge sliding doors moment for me. Not just for the connections and collaborations and all of the rest of it, but for how I kind of wanted to move into my own goddess power, as it were, my own, it's hard to find that in the online space where it feels really genuine and truly supported, in a space where we are sharing all of our vulnerabilities as well. And it's not just kind of, look how great I am and constantly trying to sell yourself in some way. And it's really been so fueling for me in so many different levels. I don't know if that really answered the question.
It really did. And I love how you describe the whole process there. And what I love about your chapter, Zoe, is the way you kind of take us through the whole day and the different things that were coming up at different points. And as you were connecting with different people and maybe what, different people were saying, and just really, obviously I was there with you, but as the reader, felt I was right there with you, going into that situation for the day, and right by your side. So it's such a powerful chapter. Thank you so much for writing it.
Thank you. Yeah. And, they called it the goddess wound because I really felt so strongly about the idea that, we all have this innate kind of fire, this desire to shine, to be our full selves, to be fully expressed and actually really inhabiting that in the present moment. And in our society, in the presence of other women, we've been taught to completely dumb ourselves down and dim ourselves and to self-efface in almost every way. And that's what came up so powerfully for me, it really was a portal, that retreat, into actually allowing that for ourselves as individuals, but also as a group, that it's okay to shine. And by shining, it doesn't mean that you have to be the loud extrovert who's, chivying everybody along to party or whatever it is. You can just be exactly who you are in that moment. And I felt that was such a permissive piece for me. I could just sit back and have to put on my party kind of persona, as it were. I didn't even have to intentionally introduce myself to people or ask people about themselves, which I feel so bloody uncomfortable. You can just be, and that learning to be in my own essence and with other people's, all of the other women's essences, that was just such a massive gift, honestly.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness. I could literally talk to everyone forever about this. Zoe, for those who want to find out more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that? Are you going to burn everything down, or is there a way we can connect with you?
Just listening to an art podcast about how rubbish Instagram is these days, and the artist on there, the host was saying, she's going to burn hers down as well. I think it's a feeling right now, definitely, but there's not a massively better platform at the moment. So yes, I am on Instagram. I am Zoe KM Foster. That's Kirsten McIntosh Foster, for those not calling me. And my website is zoekmfoster.com, where you can find out about all my art, my offerings, and my musings. I've got a blog and stuff as well. Proper old school.
Fantastic. We'll make sure everything's in the show notes anyway. Thanks so much.